James Turk, gold price manipulation. Do you have, and I guess you have, evidence that it's taking place exactly now?
Yes, I think the latest evidence was the announcement by a CFTC commissioner that silver is being manipulated. There have been some lawsuits now in the United States in regard to that. But it's quite clear that gold is they've been trying to cap the gold price, because by doing so it makes the dollar look better than it really is. It makes the dollar look worthy of being the world's reserve currency when in fact it's not, because gold is the only natural competitor to the US dollar. So if you can keep the gold price low, it makes the dollar look better than it really is, and I think that's been the efforts over the past several years to try to keep the gold price from rising. But just like the gold price capping in the 1960s finally gave way in the 1970s, it's quite clear to me that the gold price capping over the past several years is giving way here, which is why the gold price is starting to rise so rapidly.
Mm-hmm. And when will this manipulation end in your eyes?
I think it's ending now, actually.
It's ending now?
Yeah, I think it's ending now. I think they're finally losing control. Central banks are no longer selling gold. Some central banks that don't agree with the capping are starting to buy gold in order to protect themselves. The concerns about the US dollar are rising very rapidly, and as a natural alternative, people are turning to gold. I mean, there are no safe currencies anymore. Back in the 1970s, you could buy the Deutschmark, you could buy the Swiss franc. The Deutschmark doesn't exist. The Swiss franc is now tied to the euro for all practical purposes. So if the dollar goes down, and given the fact that the euro has basically dollars in reserves, the euro is probably going to go down with it. So the only safe haven alternative currency now is gold and silver.
How high will the gold price rise or climb, given that this manipulation ends now? What would be the fair price for 1 ounce of gold now?
Well, I think right now a fair price of gold would probably be at least double from what it presently is, based on where platinum is trading and the fact that gold normally has a premium to the price of platinum. But my longer term price forecast has always been $8,000 an ounce sometime between 2013 and 2015. I made that forecast back in 2003 when gold was $350. And I was basically saying that history can repeat. In 2003, it took $10 to purchase what $1 purchased in 1971. So if gold can go from $35 to $800 in the 70s, it can go on an inflation-adjusted basis from $350 to $8,000. So I'm sticking to this $8,000 price forecast sometime between 2013 and 2015. And I think now that gold is in the second stage of its bull market, I think you're going to see more rapid price appreciation than we've done over the past several years.
You said earlier that this gold manipulation ends now. How can you prove this? I mean, who has interest in a gold price like $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 per ounce? Because this means automatically that everybody sees that something is wrong in our financial system.
That's exactly right. You can only cap the gold price for so long. Eventually, you're going to run out of resources. Eventually, the market.
But it's only paper money, and paper money you can print or make as much as you want.
Yes, you can, but ultimately that destroys paper money, and that's exactly what's happening to the dollar and the euro. Too much paper money is being printed, too many dollars are being created, and as a consequence, people understand that if you create too much paper, if you do quantitative easing, which is another fancy word for money printing, if you do that, eventually the currency is going to be destroyed. So in order to protect yourself, you have to go to gold. Now the fact of the matter is that there's a lot of paper out there and very little gold. So it only takes a small amount of people to move out of paper to move into gold to have a big impact on the gold price, just like it did back in the 1970s. When gold finally broke free at $35 an ounce, it went from 35 to 200 over a course of 3 years. My guess is that over the next couple of years, you're seeing gold go from 1,000 up to 2,500, 3,000 before it goes to this 8,000 price I'm looking at in 2013 and 2015. So I think you're going to see a much more rapid increase in the price of gold, because all of the people who understand that gold is sound money and are looking for a safe haven are moving out of paper into physical metal.
And at the moment, only a few people understand that. It will become more. Somebody has reckoned it out that only half an ounce per man on this planet is left. Is that true?
Yeah, that's about right.
How much is it?
I think that's an accurate number. But the point is that you're making is that people, as they see the gold price rising, they intuitively understand that something is wrong with the monetary system. That causes them to look and see what's going on. As more people look and see that gold is a good place to be, that gold is a good currency to be saving and holding and accumulating, that in itself will provide more demand for gold, less demand for paper alternatives, and as a consequence, the gold price will rise.
Don't you see the danger of a gold prohibition then? I mean, if the system managers see that the gold price is rising, that people are escaping or fleeing into gold, isn't there the chance that they say, okay, now we prohibit it, as America did already one time?
Yeah, America did that in 1933, but they didn't prohibit ownership of gold by Americans outside of the United States. And there may be a prohibition again this time in the future. So what you need to do is you need to diversify geographically, different countries, different political systems, and hold your gold in different places around the world. And that way you can mitigate the risks of confiscation with your gold, which I think is the most important bedrock asset in your portfolio.
How strong or how high do you see the chance that the prohibition will come? I mean, gold 8,000 means financial system at its end. That means chaos, maybe anarchy, also politicians who don't know what to do. I mean, how big the chance is that the prohibition will become reality again?
I'm not so sure that there will be a prohibition. I think the chance of prohibition on gold in any wide scale would probably be less than 20%. What I do see is a very high probability that there will be capital controls. And right now there's a lot of talk that with this recent program of quantitative easing that the Federal Reserve is starting, that there will be a lot of capital controls by countries outside the U.S. preventing the inflow of dollars to stop domestic inflation in terms of domestic currencies. So what you're going to see is more international trade tensions, more currency wars, more capital controls internationally. Gold may be affected, but if it is, it won't be affected until a much later date at a much higher price.
But the more people go into gold, the higher the chance is that it's going to be prohibited, in my opinion.
True. But right now, so few people truly understand gold. It's very early in gold's bull market. It's not going to be for a long time before gold becomes the center of attention. It's going to take a long time at a much higher price.
Some people say, although you are convinced that the price is going higher, now gold has already reached record levels. Most of the people don't own any gold. What would you recommend them to do?
Same thing I've been recommending all decade long. Just every month or every quarter, whenever your budget allows it, save, accumulate, buy some gold. And what you're doing when you're accumulating gold is you're saving sound money, and that's a good thing. Savings is always a good thing, and it's a particularly good thing when you're saving sound money because you're preserving purchasing power. But don't think gold is too high just because it's at a record price. The important thing is what its value is and what its usefulness is. And all of my measures show that gold is still good value, it's still undervalued, and also gold is still useful. It's the only money that does not have counterparty risk. In other words, it's the only money that's not dependent on someone's promise. And as the financial crisis continues to deepen and play itself out over the next few years, avoiding the promises of others is a very important way and good way to protect your wealth.
How big do you see the chance of a hyperinflation in our system, especially in the States?
I personally believe the chances of hyperinflation at the moment are 100%. And the reason is that the U.S. is on the road to hyperinflation. They're doing the same thing that other countries that have hyperinflated their currency have done. The U.S. government is spending too much money, forcing it to borrow, and it's borrowing more money than the market is willing to lend to it. So the government, in that case, is turning to the central bank, and the central bank is buying that government debt and turning it into currency. And that's what destroys a currency. That's ultimately what leads to hyperinflation. Now, the U.S. happens to call it by a fancy name, quantitative easing. But the reality is that quantitative easing is money printing. And money printing at the scale that the U.S. government is now pursuing is leading to hyperinflation. I think we're very, very close. You know, I'm talking months, I'm not talking years.
James Turk, thank you very much for this talk.
Thank you, it's a pleasure.